Welcome to the Double Blonde Brokers podcast. With this podcast, our hope is that clients and friends alike can learn something. With each episode, we make light of the complexity of health insurance by offering tips, tricks, vocab lessons, and even sharing stories of our experiences as brokers. New episodes launch every Wednesday.
Welcome to episode 6 of the Double Blonde Broker podcast. And today we have a special guest with us, Miss Sherri Miller, and she works with our organization to help us with any of the more complex Medicare questions and just to be our overall support. So Sherri, tell us a little bit about what you do for Medicare.
I would love to. So I currently work with an organization where we help brokers all over the country, educating as much as we possibly can on Medicare so that we can help as many people as possible across the nation. I have been in the insurance industry since 2002. I got licensed in 2003, so that's kind of showing my age, isn't it? But I've been solely focused on Medicare since 2007. It's my passion. It's the greatest thing on the planet, I think.
Great. So you're bringing a lot of knowledge, which is good.
I have learned a lot. And
you have learned a lot. So what we're going to talk about today, because in our previous podcast, we've talked a little bit all about the general things of Medicare, but we want to talk today a little bit about there's some special plans. And I know you kind of have a special place in your heart for them, where people are qualified for both Medicare and Medicaid, and they have special plans available to them. But what we're going to start off with is, Emily, if you could, I keep forgetting to introduce ourselves. Emily Keaton, Suzanne O'Connor. I did a good job with Sherri, but forgot us. Okay, so Emily, tell us a little bit, what is the difference between Medicaid and Medicare? Because people are always getting those two words confused.
I can't tell you how many times I've had people tell me, I just turned 65 and I get Medicaid. And I'm like, no, you don't. Wrong one. So Medicare and Medicaid, of course, they sound very similar. Government likes to make things a little bit challenging. But so Medicaid is actually reserved for people with lower income levels or certain types of disabilities. You can also get approved to have Medicaid. And then Medicare, on the other hand, is for people who are over the age of 65, and also sometimes is for people with disabilities as well. You can get approved to have Medicare. So you can kind of already tell there's this space where sometimes those two overlap. Either you are disabled and low income, sometimes those can overlap. There's various different reasons. And we call that, when you have both of them, to be dual eligible. So that's kind of really what we're going to talk about today, is what to do when you have both.
Yep. All right. Very good. So tell us a little bit, Sherri, about how DSNPs actually work and or benefit a client if they are entitled to both.
So if somebody qualifies for a DSNP plan, typically I would say on average, that means that they qualify for full Medicaid, which means that their income is low enough that they're receiving a full subsidy to help them with their Part B cost and some of their cost for their medical care as well. What I love about a DSNP plan is that they offer benefits above and beyond what original Medicare typically covers. So there are certain services that folks in that demographic utilize more, such as transportation, such as, extra funds that go into over the counter to help them with their daily items. So there are a lot of extra benefits that actually mold into a DSNP plan, which help folks that are in this situation. And it allows them to pay lower in their healthcare costs, but also receive better care. And sometimes, depending on their situation, they may get extra support from the carrier as well to help them with certain chronic illnesses and whatnot. So there's definitely a lot more support and most often more benefits that are involved in it as well. But the thing that I think everybody gets stumped on is, well, if I enroll in this plan, am I going to have to pay more? Typically, no, because they are receiving the full subsidy to help cover the things that Medicare they would typically have a cost for.
So you actually mentioned it's a chronic one. So there's a dual, that's the one that's going to cover Medicare and Medicaid, but there's a chronic, as we call them, a CSNP.
Yeah.
And that's to cover certain chronic illnesses. What type of illnesses generally are those?
They do vary. I think one thing that there's not enough education on is there aren't CSNP plans in every single county in every single state, so they are a little rare. But CSNP stands for Chronic Special Needs Plan, and essentially it's designed for certain illnesses. So I would say the most common is for diabetes, chronic heart failure, and then again, depending on what area you're in across the country, sometimes it'll be for certain lung disorders or additional medical conditions. But if you do have those medical conditions, those plans are specifically designed to help you have better health outcomes and to be able to better help you manage those chronic diseases.
Okay, good. So sometimes people receive unknowingly, they're really not even applying for Medicaid, but they get enrolled in Medicare. And the next thing you know, they've got a card in the mail that says they're enrolled in Medicaid. Whether they were on an ACA plan before or something triggered it. So do those people need to just automatically go with the Medicaid and Medicare? What do you suggest for people to do when they get mailed these cards out of the clear blue sky? Like, oh, I'm entitled to this for zero. What should I do?
Well, I think the first thing that they should do is contact a local broker
Oh,
because
there we go.
this is a very complex situation. And even agents that have been in the market for a long time still kind of struggle with Medicaid and C-SNP plans. So what's really great about if you're automatically enrolled in something, please know that you always have options. So typically when that happens, you're receiving something in the mail that says, as of this specific date, you're going to automatically be enrolled in this carrier. More information will come. But there's always a time frame where you can make a different choice, right? And that's what's so great is we get to make different choices. But if that doesn't happen, going back to the enrollment periods that we were just talking about, if someone qualifies for Medicaid, then that is considered a special enrollment period. Whether you gain access to Medicaid or you lose access to Medicaid, that's a special enrollment period. And with that specific reason, you can switch plans one time per quarter for the first 3 quarters of the year. So let's say they get that letter in the mail, or maybe they accidentally forget to open it up or they don't get it and they're automatically enrolled in a plan. Well, they've got options, right? So technically, there's 3 times they can switch using that enrollment period and then AEP. So there's at least 4 different times they can switch throughout the year. So if something happens, don't worry. There's always flexibility with that, which is nice.
Right. Okay. Well, that's great. And not everybody realizes or understands that availability because they kind of do get hung up in the only certain times of the year. So, all right. So basically what we'd like to do is I'm going to kind of close with this, Sherri, if you can talk a little bit about what the low income subsidy is. That particularly, how does that work in relationship to a DSNP?
I'm a nerd. This is one of my favorite things to talk about. So there are 2 separate financial programs to assist beneficiaries in helping with cost, right? Everything is going up in the economy. Everything is more expensive. When you retire, your income is not going up typically. So I love that there are 2 separate programs that a lot of people qualify for and they don't recognize it. So when we talked about Medicaid earlier, Medicaid is run state by state. It is a federal program, but it's run by each state. And that's what helps with the cost of your Medicare Part A and B benefits, your medical benefits. But there is a separate program called Extra Help, also known as Low Income Subsidy, also known as LIS, because we love acronyms in the insurance business, but they're all the same thing. And essentially what that is it's a federal program that if someone qualifies, it is on the basis of your financial assets and your financial income. But the qualification for that is much more broad than Medicaid. So you can make a decent amount more money and qualify for help. And that covers your prescription drugs. So we all know that there's a problem with cost of prescription drugs in the United States. It is in everyone's mind and everyone's conversations, right? A lot of people are affected by the cost of that. This program is amazing because again, you can make more money. You can still qualify. There are different levels, but every level would significantly help somebody save on their out-of-pocket costs and sometimes their premiums for their prescription drug programs. So it's pretty great when we can help a consumer apply, and if they get accepted, on average, it saves over $5,000 a year in outpatient
Wow,
for
that's
the
great.
Sherri. Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thank you so much for shedding some light on this very different subject about Medicare. Not everybody knows about. And so we're going to have you on another session to where we're going to talk about some special enrollment periods, right? Because there's a bunch of different ones that most people just are not aware of. So we'd like a little bit of help with that. So we're going to sign off for now, but invite you to come back with us on our next podcast.
Thank you.
You so much.
Thank you. Thanks so much for joining us today. We are so glad to have you here. If you liked what you heard or learned something new, then feel free to give us a like and a follow. Also, don't be afraid to share us with a friend or write us a review, and you can follow us on all social media platforms. We are on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram as @DoubleBlondeBrokers. You can also send us an email to doubleblondebrokers@gmail.com if you have any suggestions for future episodes or would like to use us as your brokers.